Thank you very much for watching. Let's get into a conversation right now with a lady who I'm sure is very happy to, as always, have the last name Hanson, but also have a job inside the machine that is One Nation, because yet again a new high when it comes to news poll. First time to say good day to you this year, my love. Lovely to see you, Lee Hanson, of course. Fingers crossed she'd get into the Senate if there was an election anytime soon. And we'll find out, well, just how high they can go. Thank you, and thank you very much for joining us, mate. Also, David Limbrick is a Libertarian. I think if you actually took my blood, you would be able to check that I had a fairly large Libertarian streak in there. He, of course, is going for re-election in the Victorian election. Let's get into all of this. All right, lad and lady, latest opinion poll, again, tells the same story as multiples before. But, Lee, I know the answer is 51% because it's a majority of the country. But as an organisation, do you feel like you're starting to get towards the ceiling at the moment? Or is the expectation that if you can make up 5 points in a news poll in a 2-week period, that the chances of cracking deep into the 30s and maybe even leapfrogging the Labor Party for overall primary support, does that feel like it's coming sooner rather than later, or people need to understand, look, a clear second, you'll take that 2 years out from an election?
Paul, we're going to break the ceiling. So we're breaking records. The support and movement to One Nation has been fantastic. And there's many reasons as to why that's occurring. But fundamentally, it is because One Nation is speaking for the majority of Australians. We are talking about the real issues, everyday issues, immigration, cost of living, housing. There are many components, and we're not afraid to have the conversation. So our target right now is to prove and to demonstrate the incompetence of the Labor government. That is what we are focusing on, is to ensure that we can either gain opposition and ultimately break the ceiling and move towards government. We are capable, we have the right leader, people are seeing that. You're seeing that in the polls. I think what Senator Hanson was one of the most favourable female politician or leader in this nation, and people are resonating. So I only see the sky or the ceiling increasing even further. So it's great news, but at the same token, we cannot take our foot off the pedal in any way, shape or form. We've got a lot of work to do. We're not taking it for granted, and we'll keep charging on.
David, again, you're watching this. You have a strand to the centre-right of Australian politics that you would like to be sitting where One Nation is, certainly in terms of the numbers, but you're able to consistently get people elected to the Victorian, New South Wales Parliament, be very competitive when it comes to some of these Senate races. Why do you think that there is this mass movement? How sticky do you think it is? How much of it is up for grabs? How much magically changes if Angus Taylor does what they say he's probably going to do? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, there's clearly a large group of people that are upset with the major parties, especially the Liberal Party. They see One Nation as, a very big character, Senator Hanson. She's got a very large profile. And they think, well, I'm going to support that because it's something different. I think at a state level, though, things are quite different. We've got an election coming up in November, and I think that people are going to judge political parties on their track record. And, both One Nation and the Libertarian Party have a representation in the Victorian Parliament, and I'm proud of many of the achievements that we've done over this term of Parliament. We've gotten stamp duty inquiries. We've put up private members' bills to remove nuclear prohibition. We've kept a serial killer in prison. We've forced the government kicking and screaming to recognise the problems with gender medicine for children. So I think that there's a lot of achievements that we've done in Victorian Parliament, and I hope that the Victorian people see that and judge us on it.
David, I like what you do there. Every opportunity to get in, to make the sales pitch, to go through the list. But I promise you this, mate, plenty of time on this show, mostly on a Sunday night. We'll try and give you that time. So there's plenty of time between now and November. But good on you for pushing nice and hard there. Also really interesting to notice here too that obviously, depending on the maths and depending on the state, becoming the beneficiary of One Nation preferences, David, is going to be really interesting because, now again, One Nation is very, can do deals with the Liberal Party. Liberal Party at time doing deals with One Nation. But we have seen that many of the on the right, not Liberal parties, all try to sort of chain it between themselves, hand pass between themselves before it ends up with the lesser of two evils. Obviously, the higher One Nation goes, the more potential, not just crumbs, but slices of paper, slices of bread that might actually fall off the kitchen table. I was trying to do so well with that metaphor, but I screwed it up.
Well, yeah, I mean, like preferences are something that flows into everything, and, I'm not in charge of that in our party, but obviously we try and exchange, preferences. Ultimately, it's up to people, though, to decide for themselves, and I think, as was pointed out earlier, both One Nation and Libertarian voters are quite, they think for themselves, I think, and they decide for themselves what they want to do. If they want to, send their preference to a party with some overlap, then they'll do that.
Lee, can I do a question without notice, as they like to say, I think is in politics, but still, of all of those things that have helped drive this revolution, right, what are the types of things that One Nation either champions in values or, more importantly, specifically through a specific policy that is something that Labor and Libs won't go anywhere near? I mean, not about immigration, but I'm thinking, is it things like family court? Is it things like income splitting? What are some of the things that One Nation has been able to, once people start to have a look, put on the table that others won't? And that, in part, is what leads to my view that once you make a change, this is not about, what packet of chips you get from the shops. This is about who you want to run the country. So I reckon once you make a change, you're not likely to go back. Your thoughts?
Look, Paul, there's a couple of components to that answer. First of all, what is really fundamentally resonating is that One Nation provides hope. It doesn't matter who you are within the party, whether it's Senator Hanson, myself, or any of our candidates walk the streets or members of parliament. People are saying thank you. You're the only party or the only politicians that are actually giving us hope, where we feel the prosperity and opportunities of our country can come back. We can once again claim that. In addition to hope, it's patriotism. People see that we actually have a political party that is standing up for this country, that loves this country, and the decisions we are making and the policies we put forward are for this country first and foremost. And that is really important, and that is really critical. But then, yes, you break it down into policies, and it's everyday common sense policies. And these are policies that many people are familiar with because the other parties actually claim them as their own. So yes, you might talk about, immigration. Obviously, One Nation leads the way. Yes, we do. We're not afraid to have the conversation and actually state the words mass immigration. But it is family law tax, family law. We've been fighting that for a very long time. It's gender dysphoria within children. We're the only party that's really standing the ground and trying to break this ridiculous harm that is causing upon our children. It's the woke education system and standing up for the education. It's the housing. There are so many issues. But getting back down to basic policy, so family income tax splitting, even alcohol tax. Do you know what I mean? Cut the alcohol tax is actually One Nation's policy. Scrap the fuel tax is actually One Nation's policies. But instead, the other parties, because they can't actually resonate or understand basic issues of everyday Australians, they ride off the coattails of One Nation policies and then claim them as their own. So when these parties come out and say right wing, Pauline Hanson or One Nation has no policies is a load of rubbish, then why do they keep claiming it as their own? It's a deflection tactic, right? Because they don't have the answers. So we'll claim One Nation's answers as our own and treat people like fools.
No, I'm with you. David, let's get to Victoria. And again, every now and then I like to put things on the table that aren't that obvious or people have been thinking about all weekend. Conversion therapy, something that's been banned in Victoria. Some legal advice has come to the media's attention. Your thoughts on how the Victorian government is implementing this law?
Yeah, so back in 2021, the government put through this bill called the Change and Suppression Bill. And the sales pitch around it was banning conversion therapy, which no one actually supports, which is, trying to make people that are homosexual, not homosexual. No one supports that, including me. But the other thing that the bill did is it forced this, what they call affirmation-only approach with people that are questioning, with gender dysphoria. And what it basically says is when you talk to a therapist or someone in your religious group or something like that, and someone's, if you get a girl that thinks that she's a boy and she tells someone that, no one's allowed to sort of talk that out. They have to just accept it. And I thought that this was a really dangerous thing. That's why the Libertarians led the charge in opposing this. Mm-hmm. As time has gone on, the government was meant to review this law in 2024. They haven't done it. So I've been like a dog with a bone pushing them. And then finally, after media reporting last weekend, they've finally agreed to go ahead with a review as of Monday.
Good man. See, this is it, right? This is why you need people who've got the time to be able to follow in on an issue, right? That is exactly why I like that David was there. He was an absolute thorn in their side in COVID, and he's a thorn in their side on issues like this, and a champion for good causes too. See, I like the Libertarians. I like the One Nation as well. All right, gang, quickly here, a bold prediction for the week ahead. Your thoughts, Lee Hanson?
Ooh. Look, even though... Little Proud and Lee have gotten back together, I suspect with the polls again this week, I don't know how there's not going to be a leadership challenge for Lee. I really don't see that it's not going to happen. So it's probably not really a bold prediction. It's probably just a reality, if I'm being honest.
That's
but hey,
fine.
let's just call it and let's just name it.
Sometimes we take big swings. Sometimes we just hit the ball that's on the tee. I get it. David, your thought? A bold prediction?
Well, my bold prediction isn't much different, and it's not a very bold prediction either. I think, again, in the Victorian Liberal Party, we're going to see more drama over the next week.
All right. Well, my bold prediction is I think there's a good chance that we could be in the dying days of Keir Starmer's Prime Ministership in the UK. We will discuss all of that next. Thank you, guys. We'll see you again next week. Mark